Lincoln Riley's got a little bit of a history of being a baby, and that reared its ugly head this week. Again, I think for the second time in less than a month, Lincoln Riley's penchant for coming off as not only arrogant, but kind of a whiner happened again. USC has suspended a reporter from attending practices for 2 weeks due to an egregious violation. The reporter, who his name is Luca Evans for the Southern California news group, the Orange County Register, was informed that he was no longer welcome to practice for 2 weeks because he made a very, very serious mistake. And before we get into that very, very serious mistake, let's just rehash some of the Lincoln Riley being a baby happenings over the course of the last, 5 years or so. If you remember his time at Oklahoma, there was a situation where the student newspaper was able to observe practice because Lincoln Riley wasn't letting them observe practice. That essentially said, hey, Caleb Williams is going to start on Saturday instead of Spencer Rattler because Spencer Rattler hadn't been playing very good and Caleb Williams was breathing down his neck, and Lincoln Riley wasn't very happy about that. There was a tweet this morning of a former Oklahoma student newspaper reporter who said that during his time at the school, one of the projects that he was working on had a camera outside on a balcony that overlooked the practice field and overlooked the stadium. And he was working on a non-sports story, and an Oklahoma staffer came over and started screaming at them that they needed to put the camera back inside. He said, the camera's not pointed to the practice field. There's nothing to worry about. And they said, yes, there is. You can put the camera back inside the way I'm telling you to. And he just said it just reeked of paranoia. And I think there's reasonable paranoia, I think, unless the word paranoia just completely means that there is no reasonable paranoia. But I think there's reasonable paranoia, especially in the Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams situation in Lincoln's final year there at Oklahoma, where you need to be worried about that news getting out. Or, if you're like, hey, the New England Patriots are practicing at Gillette Stadium, we think the New England Patriots might have this place bugged. Yeah, that's reasonable paranoia. The paranoia in this situation is outrageous, and we'll get back to it in a little second. But Lincoln Riley's got this long history of, he tweeted the picture of his brisket on Easter, and it looked drier than the Mojave. And he started blocking people because they were like, bro, what did you do to that brisket? It's not supposed to look like sawdust. And it did. There's just a couple of weeks ago, Lincoln Riley said that, in an interview with Graham Bensinger, the syndicated TV show, that when he decided that he was going to leave Oklahoma for USC, that he told people around him, this is going to be bad. It's going to be bad. And people are going to be breaking into our house and things. And he said that they were breaking into his house. And then the Norman Police Department, somebody asked, and they were like, yeah, we had a call, but nobody was breaking into his house. I think there's a long line of Lincoln Riley maybe kind of embellishing things and being somewhat of a tyrant, I think is a fair word to use. This situation is ridiculous to me, and it just shouts that you're really worried about things that don't matter. And I don't understand that. I don't understand if that's an insecurity. I don't understand what the idea is behind being so preoccupied with everything but football. And if it doesn't have to do with football, I don't get it. But the situation this week is Luca Evans, who writes for the Orange County Register, wrote a story about USC running back Quentin Joyner and how he is having a really good season this year. And he started the piece off by saying that Quentin Joyner, when he was about to interview him, Quentin Joyner had asked Braylon Shelby, who's another player at USC, um, and Braden Shelby had said, just talk about the team. Because as a freshman running back, he's like, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what you're going to ask me. I don't know what to talk about. And the other guy said, just talk about the team. That was the infraction that USC is mad about. The reason he was suspended was because I forget what, let me pull up the official justification from USC was that the official justification was that the reporter had used a quote that was not gathered at a media availability. That's the issue. Since it wasn't designated as a media availability. Now, they said that this same reporter has had other major infractions, like asking a question after a press conference had ended and talking to players and coaches in areas of campus that weren't designated as media availabilities. That reporters are prohibited from reporting on anything outside of media availabilities in the practice facility. And if that's your policy, fine. But the idea that when a freshman running back is going to speak to the media for the first time and the reporter says, somebody told him, just talk about the team, man, that is what leads to a 2-week suspension from USC credential. It's preposterous, and it reeks of Lincoln Riley continuing his long reign of being a baby. And Lincoln Riley gave this really long quote about, this is Lincoln Riley's quote. I don't feel like we have too many rules, too many policies, but the ones that we do have, take them serious, because my first job is not to, even though it is part of my job, it's not for the media, it's not for the fans, it's not anyone else, it's protecting the players. That is first and foremost. I know the article in question was not accurate. There were multiple policies broken and felt like it was far enough that we needed to act. We look forward to welcoming the reporter back when the time is up. End quote. On what planet is saying that a 18-year-old kid asking somebody else what they should talk about in an interview doing any harm to a player? How was the player unprotected in that moment? They weren't. The player doesn't even look bad. It's not some breaking news that there are 18-year-olds who aren't great at interviews. I don't think anybody is like, oh, seriously? Oh, wow, that freshman running back isn't good at interviews and was slightly nervous. Man, this news reporter, he deserves to go to the guillotine. No, nobody thinks that. Nobody is sitting here thinking that Quentin Joyner, oh man, he looks bad. He didn't answer a question perfectly as a freshman running back. Nobody cares. Not one person is sitting around thinking about whether Quentin Joyner was protected or not by Lincoln Riley. If you think that the guy has broken some policy violation or whatever, you could have the conversation. But this idea that, oh, he was putting our player in danger, in danger. No, he wasn't. It's just the latest string of Lincoln Riley being a baby. And it reeks of the worst parts of college football. The worry about power and control and all of those things that go on, and then something bad happens and it all comes to the surface. But the people at Oklahoma, when Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma for USC, basically gave a like, hey, this guy really wasn't great to work with. Be careful what you wish for. It's going to be fine on the field, but it's very vindictive, retaliatory. I don't know if I said that, retaliatory. That might be it. I don't know. that basically said Lincoln Riley's a good football coach, but he's a jerk. And he's not doing anything to dispel that reputation. He's not doing anything that makes you think like, you know what, he might got a bad rap in Norman. No, it's just here we go again. Here we go again. And it's never really stuff on the field that gets in Lincoln Riley's way. It's never things that happen between the lines or even on the recruiting trail or, coaching hires, whatever, anything that has to do with football that trips Lincoln Riley up. It's always the mundane bull crap that comes with being a head coach that he doesn't handle well. And you understand that maybe in like your first or second year. This isn't Lincoln Riley's first rodeo. And yet here we are wondering, questioning, discussing why this continues to happen and why it continues to happen with just one guy. It's the Daily Huddle on Saturday Glory. I'm Garrett Seawright. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. Also, if you're listening on a podcast, give a 5-star review. It'll put us in front of more college football fans, and that's always a really good thing. There are a lot of college football adages in general. And one of the biggest ones is if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And I wonder if there's a way to dispel that. Can you possibly play two quarterbacks and be successful? Because I think Alabama might have to do that. Alabama might have to play two quarterbacks. I've said here on this podcast that I don't think Alabama has a solution at the sport's most important position. But if you can combine Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson, I think you might have something to work with there. The problem is I think you're tipping your hand a little bit by bringing in one of them in a certain situation or a certain down and distance that it's going to be really clear what you're doing. But I don't think any of the three quarterbacks that Alabama has played thus far are going to singularly be the solution to their problems. And I feel for Alabama fans just a little bit, not too much, because, But when you go from a list of Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, you get 3 first-round quarterbacks and a second-round quarterback, 4 NFL starters in a row at your quarterback position, and then the absolute nosedive from those 4 guys to the 3 guys that have played this season. I'm certain that is not fun to watch or think about or deal with. And especially that the performances haven't instilled much faith that any of those 3 guys were going to get to that level of being a superstar college quarterback. Not likely to happen, I don't think. I think Milroe has shown that he's probably not the solution. I think Tyler Buchner got a favor from his offensive coordinator where Tommy Rees just said, okay, Milroe stunk. Let's try my guy. They tried my guy, and my guy did not go well. And at that point, you might as well give Simpson a shot. He did. He played okay. But I just wonder if anybody can get it done, if anybody can make chicken salad out of chicken bleep, it has to be Nick Saban, right? If somebody can make that work. Like I'm not going to put a ton of faith in a first-year head coach or in an inexperienced head coach, even somebody with the success, the track record of Nick Saban. if anybody can pull it off, because I don't know that it can be pulled off. I don't know that playing two quarterbacks can actually work. I saw Urban Meyer try it with Cardale Jones and JT Barrett. Is it almost 8 years ago now, 10 years ago now? And it didn't work. And you've seen other schools try it in the past where it just leads to problems. So I buy into, I think, the adage. I'm very anti-conventional wisdom a lot of the time, and I'm happy to see that a lot of coaches are starting to buck conventional wisdom and say, you know what, I'm going for it on 4th and 4 from my own 40-yard line. I'm going to do this instead of that, because to hell with conventional wisdom. And so I appreciate that. But the conventional wisdom has, and maybe always will be, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. The issue there is I think Alabama's not afraid to say we have none. If we have one quarterback, we have none. If we have two quarterbacks, we might have half a quarterback. They have problems at the position. They know it. I know it. You know it. Their opponents know it. And everybody in Bryant-Denny knows it. But can you play two guys to give you some chance to be successful at the position? I don't know. I'm almost certain Nick Saban doesn't want to find out that he needs to play two guys at that spot. But something's got to give. And I think you got to look for out-of-the-box solutions to find the answer, because that's how bad the situation is in Tuscaloosa. Our final topic today, speaking of Alabama, speaking of SEC football, this is one of the most preposterous things I think I've ever heard a college football coach say, or somebody involved in football say. This is UAB coach Trent Dilfer talking about their game this Saturday.
Trent, you played in a lot of big-time atmospheres like Athens. How do you...
I've never played anything like this. I've been to one SEC game. My daughter's being recruited at the University of Alabama, and we went to the Ole Miss Alabama game. And to this day, I think the Kentucky Derby is the coolest thing I've ever been able to go to, live sports. I think it's better than Super Bowls. An SEC football game at night is way better atmosphere than a Super Bowl. I think it's the second coolest thing I've ever been to as a spectator. So I'm personally really excited about going to an SEC game at night. It's different. I mean, their slogan is just means more. It's different. It's true.
Trent, come on now. I know that you want to be an SEC head coach at some point. You don't need to start angling for it after a 1-2 start at UAB. That is ridiculous. And it's the biggest issue that I've had with SEC football for the last 15 years is the complete self-importance of SEC football. Because at this point, you're playing a character. SEC football fans are being what everybody thinks that they should be. Undeniably, the SEC has been incredible at the sport for 15 going on 20 years. Undeniably, the 1,000-pound gorilla of college football. But the complete incessant need of self-importance is ridiculous. And the idea that UAB playing at Georgia on Saturday night at 7:30, that will be a better atmosphere than the Super Bowl, which Trent Dilfer played in and won, is ridiculous. Now, Trent Dilfer made a career on TV speaking hyperbolically. There's the famous, you can't lose games and win in the NFL. Yeah, got it. Thank you. But the idea that an SEC night game, well, that's a better atmosphere than a Super Bowl. Come on now. I know you want an SEC job, and I know that you think you got to say dumb bleep to get it. But that's ridiculous. It's the self-inflated self-importance of the SEC run amok, because every week, and it's, and I would hold this sentiment if it was the Big Ten, the Pac-12, whoever, but it's always the SEC. It's like, oh my God, it's a big one. It's rivalry week in the SEC. It doesn't get bigger. Vanderbilt and South Carolina. Okay. Like, it's just every week. It's like, oh, it's one of the most heated rivals in college football. It's Auburn and Georgia. Like, okay. How many heated rivals do you have? How many heated rivals can you have? Because LSU, Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee have like 9 rivals apiece. And maybe it's just the part of me that grew up in the state of Ohio that, like, Ohio State fans can't agree on who the second biggest rival is to the Buckeyes, because all of their hate goes to one opponent. Now, you can argue, well, that's because it just doesn't mean as much as Tennessee, Bama. Okay. And then there's Tennessee, Bama, and then Bama, Auburn, and then there's Bama, LSU. And like, okay, how many rivals do you have? Like, do I like the idea of, yes, do I want to beat all these schools? Of course I do. But like, oh my gosh, it's a big one Saturday. It's the first Saturday in October. It's Bama, Tennessee, baby. Like, okay, well, I'm like 33. And how competitive has that been in my lifetime? Not very. Got it. It's self-important SEC. And the idea that, like, oh, it's better than the Super Bowl. The Kentucky, if your idea of like the coolest sporting events you've ever been to are the Kentucky Derby, LSU playing host to like Mississippi State at 7:30, and then the Super Bowl, I think your priorities are crooked. I think your rating might be poppycock, especially a Super Bowl that you played in and won. It's ridiculous. So, like, kudos to you for angling to get like the Mississippi State job when Zach Arnett gets fired in like 3 years. But you're going to have to wait a while, Trent. And you're going to have to be like good as a coach rather than getting waxed by Georgia Southern and Louisiana before you can get that SEC head coaching job. Been a little saucy today. Been a little salty, saucy, angry. We'll try again tomorrow. This has been the Daily Huddle on Saturday Glory. I'm Garrett Seawright. Thanks for making us a part of your day. We'll check back in with you tomorrow for a full preview of a big week of college football. 6 games featuring ranked opponents, and then other ones that matter just as much as those ones do, too. And we'll talk about it tomorrow right here on the Daily Huddle. We'll see you.